We want to use this opportunity to caution government against premature reopening of the economy, most of which is influenced by big businesses who are not making profits during this period. We were inspired and encouraged when the Minister of Health brought experts and professors to address the nation on scientific reading of the current period. We, however, do not understand the science behind the premature reopening of the economy. The reality is that majority of workers who will go back to work prematurely are black people, and knowing the negligence of big business in South Africa, particularly mines, our people will be at the risk of contracting the virus. Government must be cautioned now that if workers contract the coronavirus and infect their families, friends, and communities, government and their capitalist friends must take full responsibility for murder and attempted genocide. Cyril Ramaphosa and all companies that are rushing into premature reopening must know that they will have blood in their hands if our people die as a result of their premature and reckless and senseless reopening of the economy. Each and every company that reopens during this period must be directly held accountable for the health and safety of the workers, and we as the EFF will make sure that no life is lost due to rushed and senseless reopening of the economy. Our submission is that for each worker that contracts the disease due to premature and senseless reopening, that company should pay a fine of 5 million to the family of the deceased. It must strictly be scientific basis that should necessitate the reopening of the economy. We are called upon to survive under lockdown regulations, and the past month South Africans has demonstrated that we can survive. Fellow fighters and ground forces, we must be honest if we are to change the course and ensure that sacrifices of our forefathers do not go to waste. It will take a brave generation to protect the gains of 1994 and take the baton to lead us towards economic freedom and independence. That generation must be a generation of Pan-Africanists. It is a generation that must understand that there is no free South Africa without a free Africa. There is no freedom in South Africa without the total liberation of the African continent. We must further the gains of political freedom by building an integrated African economy. Fellow fighters, we must defend our SOEs because without them there is no home for independent economic development. We must encourage African leaders to abandon their obsession with power and unite behind a common and immediate goal of an integrated political system towards one economy and one African state. Africa must have one government, a central economy, and one president. The tragedy of coronavirus gives us an opportunity to unite as a continent to develop out of this crisis a new economy. We must use this time to develop our industry, to develop our healthcare sector, and to develop trade relations. We must go back to the ideas of Gaddafi of an African economy and currency based on mineral wealth of our continent, not imaginary markets. Today, we see the likes of the United States of America printing money without consequences to the value of their currency. This is because they control the markets that determines the value of currencies. They do this without any gold, oil, or valuable mineral resources. We see the United States manipulating international institutions because they want to be the dominant global power. They do this at the expense of nations that have mineral and raw resources. For true freedom, we must unite with progressive international forces to combat imperialist powers. We must unite with Cuba, whose legacy is progressive and shows itself today through its deployment of medical staff and resources across the world to combat the coronavirus. We must emerge from this pandemic with an African economy that will give to the world a new human face. As we commemorate Freedom Day, let us keep in our hearts the less fortunate and those who are marginalized the most in our society. Let us protect one another. Let us protect women and children, the elderly and the disabled. Let us protect Africa and her children and be caring to all of her people. As many of our hard-fought freedoms are denied to us today in combat the spread of the coronavirus, let us all remember that most basic human right is the right to life. To protect this right, let us all remain in our homes and observe the guidelines given to us by our respective governments across the world.